leave it suspended. I personally feel, there's the possibility here of the veracity of some of this. How do we explain it? Well, the original medieval explanation again is that the Earth is flat. At its center, there's Mount Meru, flat, floating in space. There's Mount Meru, very high peak. Then there's water around, and then concentric circles of lower mountains, and then four quadrants, the four continents. The south, the sky is blue, and it's the dwelling of the human world. So, be that as it may, we obviously have science, and His Holiness the Dalai Lama himself has said that if science flatly contradicts specific teaching, especially as it relates to concrete things like mountains or oceans, or if science contradicts this, we accept science. I mean, we have circumnavigation of the globe. We have satellite pictures. We have all kinds of physics observations, astronomical observations, confirmation by even the theory of relativity, and so on and so on and so on. So modern, straight thinking person would have to say, well, these other worlds of rebirth are not located on our Earth, and obviously they're not. It was thought they were, but they may still have validity. For example, one of the things I think of is I've seen some of these pictures, remote pictures of the universe, the whole universe, and when you look at it, it's kind of spread out like that, and it has a peak of, I guess, stars and celestial bodies. But the thing is, it looks a lot like the medieval picture. So who's to say if somebody didn't, in a vision, see this and interpret it as, oh, this is our Earth, but instead of that, it's the whole universe. So again, it's the whole distinction between, a world, a planet, and the universe. It's a land. These are not things that are specifically, precisely defined. I personally believe these worlds could be in other dimensions. For example, in other planets. There could be life in certain planets that is like hell. We share with the animal world. We have insects and animals in our world. And if you were to look at the world through the eyes of a fish, the world would be very different. You'd be looking at a different world. And that could be the animal realm. I mean, it doesn't have to be in another Earth. As they say, if four beings approached a river, the hell being would see it as fire, the hungry ghost would see it, and we'll go into that, see it as body decay and body fluids, the human would see it as water, and the pleasure gods would see it as ambrosia, nectar. Same water, different perceptions. Interesting that we refer to it as water, because that's our human perception. But in reality, it has none of it doesn't inherently possess any of the four levels of characteristic. We project that with our karma. So that could be it. We talk about parallel dimensions. It could exist in parallel dimensions. Who knows? There's the theory, which I don't subscribe to myself, that every time an atom splits or an electron is released, that another parallel world is generated. That's a little too baroque for my imagination. But if there were, parallel worlds, maybe that some of these worlds are what's being described. And the last way to look at it, which a lot of Westerners I think find comfortable in approaching, and is valid. It's just as valid as, to me, it coexisting with what I just described. But that's the psychological explanation. That humans, and you can see that in yourself right now. If you go through different emotional states, you just can continue to cycle through. One moment you're enraged, the next moment you're, say, sad and lonely. The next moment you talk to someone you love. The next moment you're just sort of drinking to oblivion like an animal. And you go through all these. So you are all these different beings. The difference is, though, the fixation, that some individuals are fixated in certain psychological patterns, which is certainly unfreedom. Unfreedom, even not metaphysically, but emotional unfreedom. And psychologists and therapists know this very well. people who are obsessive or fixated or something like that, psychotic, are stuck in a certain world. And it's valuable with the use of meditation and other devices to be able to see if we are stuck. And of course the answer is to let go, to let this flow, to stay in the present, to not grab on, try to push away or pull in pleasure, push away pain, but to stay with things. It's what Pema Chodron had called a wisdom of no escape, that you just sort of present yourself here and now. And there's many different teachings that emphasize being in the present, opening to what is. And when you do that enough, if not at the beginning, things begin to flow. It kind of like these frozen states kind of tend to melt and thaw, and then what you experience is not around, but a fluctuation, a cycling of different moods, different feelings. What comes up, the thoughts and feelings are called the risings. So Dilgo Khyentse Rinpoche had said, leave the risings and the risings. And when we do that again, what's called our consciousness is a collection of flashes, of moments of consciousness that goes so fast that they look like they're solid, just like a moving picture. There's several still pictures that we run them through and they look solid. The same way our consciousness to us, when we focus on awareness, our untrained awareness, looks solid, looks real. However, when we sharpen our awareness through meditation, and we don't kind of muck with the contents of our awareness, we begin to see that these are flashes that flash constantly and are constantly dying. One comes out, lasts, goes, and the next one comes out, goes, and they're in fact not necessarily connected in a continuous way. They're connected perhaps with what triggers them. So anyway, it said, the previous moment is the cause of the following moment, and the following moment is the cause of the moment after that. So in that sense, but so you could look at it psychologically and say, well, I don't know about these worlds of rebirth, but certainly in one lifetime, there's continual rebirth, and that would be accurate as well. So again, to recapitulate, the 6 worlds that we're said to be born into are the God or pleasure world, Titan, jealous God, human, animal, hungry ghost, and the hell realms. Now the God world is punctuated by pleasure. It's like being in a sort of a hypnotic trance, entranced by beauty. It's kind of the New Age ideal of how things should be. They're not actually, but all entranced by pleasure, enjoying beautiful things, wonderful things. Not reflecting much on things. It's been compared to, being a surfer in California, living a carefree life. But in our human world, that can last for a while, but sooner or later something happens to burst the bubble. But in the God world, what happens is, of course, they have a very long life, and after 1,000 years or whatever, they get old and they start to smell. Usually they're perfumed and golden hued bodies. And so when they start to get old and smell, they start to decay and die, and the other gods don't want to touch them with a 10-foot pole. It is said, that if they had family or friends, that the friends would throw flowers at them, but, from a distance. Not that different from the way maybe we treat, old people by hiding them in nursing homes, or dying people by hiding them in hospices. At least hospice is a little more compassionate, but you don't really see, in the old days, I'm old enough to remember, people would take care of their parents or their grandparents that were sick, and they would have them at home. People would die at home. Much better conditions to die in peace. But, it's like the God world. Let's not hear about that. Let's not